So I wanted to take a quick minute to walk you through how I set up my rifle for competition and what I'll do with any rifle to make sure that it's set up for the most optimal success. So first, starting at the rear, you'll notice I have my butt plate up about an inch. That's simply so that if I'm in a high standing position, I don't have the bottom of the butt pad contacting the wrong portion of my shoulder, but also so that when I'm in a prone position, the recoil of the rifle is much more in line with the center point of the chassis. So I can control the rifle better through the shot by having a butt pad that's more aligned with my natural shoulder position and shape. Second, I've set my grip angle. The MDT grip, the Elite grip, has a really unique feature in that it can adjust both forward, back, and also to your angle. And in doing so, I make sure that I have a grip angle that suits my hand specifically and gets me a perfect 90-degree trigger press and trigger angle for each trigger press. Next, I'm making sure that my length of pull is set for me. You know, a lot of people will set up their rifle and have a long length of pull because they can get behind it. If your length of pull is too long, you'll tend to move off axis to the rifle. You'll start to cant your body away from it, or if you're shooting positionally, you'll blade your body to the rifle. Both of those things are generally speaking bad. They're not going to help you be consistent because under recoil, it will tend to push around the rear end of the rifle more. So I run a fully collapsed buttstock. I have the proper grip angle for my hand, so it's natural with no tension. And on top of that, the other side of this rifle, you can see I have a small grip that I basically use to make sure my hand is placed in the exact same spot as I'm taking every shot from a position. From there, I've set my scope distance the same on all of my rifles so that from the rear, my eye relief from the rear of my scope to my butt pad is identical, so that on every rifle I know where my head goes. And lastly, on this rifle, I'm actually experimenting with some things that I've worked with in relation to my cheek weld. So I've actually removed my cheek piece entirely so that I can practice using something called a jaw weld. For people and shooters who have really heavy cheek pressure, there are times where that can work really well. There's also times where that can be a hindrance. By going to a jaw weld, I can immediately feel it contact my lower jaw. I can immediately say, I've got enough pressure. I don't need a ton of pressure in this area to maintain control over the rifle. And I'll make sure that I send the best natural point of aim shot that I can from every shot on in a match. Moving forward along the rifle, one of the most important characteristics of rifle setup is rifle balance. So some rifles, if they're really rear heavy or very front heavy, will change the balance point front to back. And as you apply pressure to your bag, you know, this rifle is perfectly balanced at about 3 to 4 inches in front of my mag well. If I were to slide it forward to the rear, you can see it wants to tip down. If I go forward of that, it'll tip to the rear. In precision rifle shooting, we want to set our rifle most often on the balance point so that we have the least amount of rifle motion that we're supporting. We want the rifle to be supported by a prop or by an obstacle or by a tripod, so that we're barely doing much to drive the rifle. We're simply letting the rifle do the work, which does take work to get you into that position. But also, I have my bipod set up in a slightly different position as well. I have different positions I'll run from, say, full long-range prone shots. I want the bipod extended as far forward as I can get it to maximize the amount of distance between my rear support and my front support, so I have less torque about the front or less movement of the front of the muzzle. Also, moving to the rear, if I'm in a shorter, tighter position, such as on this bench, or the spool, I may actually shorten up my bipod so that I can make sure that my bipod feet aren't going to fall off of the obstacle or prop. That can be up to and including all the way to the point where I'm at my balance point. Once you get beyond that, if I go any further, all of a sudden you're going to find the rifle wants to tip forward, and that's not a good position you'd want to have on your rifle. So taking the time to understand your balance point in relation to your bipod will help you hit more targets. Just find the best setup for the obstacle, the prop, or the type of shooting you're doing, and you'll hit more targets.